Howdy. I managed to watch this newest Dutchsinse video to the end. No, actually not yet. There are still some minutes missing. And since I've been talking about circuits quite a lot, in or on different scales, might it be human-sized circuits or planetary-sized circuits. And let's just give a listen to Dutchsinse. There would be a whole lot to talk about this, but I tried to make this as quick as possible, and I hope the chickens are settling down because I don't know, they had some issue. But let's just have a listen. And this is not any marketing trick or whatsoever. No, I really tried just to help. Because these things are very important. So now let's just have a listen. That's a really good show he made. I recommend you to listen to it. Watch it.
Enter the center of the earth. Arrow points down. Okay. Let's go up into Washington State and go take a look and see where these earthquakes are striking. Because where the earthquakes strike matter in comparison to the areas, because there's certain things at the areas that are leading to the earthquake striking there. In other words, there's a reason there's an earthquake striking at several of these spots. It's not just random. But before I get into the earthquake striking here, I have to tell you about something that I personally have noticed that no one else has talked about, and I'm not trying to alarm anyone. So that's why I didn't get to this at the start of the broadcast. It's just something that I'm looking at that I just find bizarre. And I'll show you right now. We're going to the weather satellite, and what we need to do, let's see, is look at true color. If I can click on it proper, there we go. And we're going to look at 200 images going back to yesterday. And here, this up here in the northwest. So up here in the northwest, you see all the clouds, okay? Now, Yellowstone, just as a point of reference, I'm not saying, I'll get to Yellowstone in a second. But Yellowstone is right here at the border of Montana and Idaho. And just keep that as a point of reference for that area. Because what I've noticed the past several days is each day, clouds are flaring off around this, and not to the south, not to the southwest, and there's a definitive cutoff line, not related to the weather. I can't figure out why it's doing this, but right through here where the fires are starting to take place, several fires broke out across Arizona, Southern California, Southern Colorado over the past several days. As a matter of fact, evacuations were issued yesterday for some fire in Southern California that broke out. I think they got it contained. Anyway, so the weather has been flaring off, and what I want you to look for, you can't see it now because it's too early in it's just starting now, but I predict, prediction, not a forecast, prediction. It's like the horse races. I predict that this will all flare off around this in a giant triangle where Yellowstone's magma chamber is at the center. Now you go to the north and you've got the fires, and the fires are insane. They're going next level again up to the north, and I don't want to get in trouble again.
Okay, me neither. But this is our world. It's very important that we somehow try to start to understand how it works. Basically, everything is electromagnetic in nature, on whatever scale. And Earth is an electric body in the universe. It's a capacitor. It can take energy in, but it has to discharge. It will discharge. It has to keep its frequency. If there's too much energy going on, it has to go away. Otherwise, the frequency cannot be sustained. But there will be times when the circuitry gets really overloaded. Much more than anyone alive has ever experienced. So now he is wondering about the clouds. I have been wondering about clouds all my life, basically. And I have been watching them. And I just want to share something which is, I think, related to this phenomena he's talking about. And for this, I use a script. Yes, I wrote this by myself. Usually, I just talk. I don't have any script or whatsoever. So that's the mountain water paper, a new approach to mountain forming, volcanism, glaciers, and the role of water in an electric environment. I seem to have come to a conclusion that water is a crystal. It's not a liquid. But that's something else, or not something else, just a part of that. But I've been talking about. Anyway, so we are talking about water, mountains, and such. I have been making hundreds of videos. There's some 350 videos about this topic. Not every video is only about mountain water. There might be some other things because I thought it could be even boring for some people hearing about the same thing over and over again. But anyway, I think that's really important. We have geothermal maps. We have Earth circuitry. And if you haven't seen this presentation, I really recommend you to check out the presentation from Bruce Leyburn. We go further down, then we talk about sea urchin spines. Jewel antennas, places where the energy from the Earth's interior makes the connection to the atmosphere. And we are at this interface. We walk on the surface of Earth, which is the actual interface. Yes. We go still further down, talking about glaciers. I think glaciers are contemporary lava streams made of water. Repetitive patterns, fractals. Water streams and clouds. Now let's just try to read me my own text. Repetitive patterns aren't only present in biology, like a tree always forming the same shape of leaves, for example. They are also present in geology, some visible with the naked eye and some aren't. The invisible patterns in question are cyclical events like eruption rhythms. The actual eruption is the consequence, and its consequences are visible, but the timeline pattern cannot be seen unless numbers are used. Put in a row and compared to each other, like in nature. With only one number, you won't get the solution. You need something to compare to, at least one other number. You will end up searching for a repetitive pattern made of numbers. This undermines the strength of repetitive patterns as evidence, with or without numbers. Numbers aren't found anywhere in nature. And nothing starts from zero. Numbers are just a tool and not the explanation itself. They can be used to make things visible, but also to obscure them. The Alps aren't just a random accumulation of rocks which every now and then get wet through rain or freeze over in wintertime. It is a very active area. Thousands of wells, dozens of glaciers, rockfalls, landslides, flash floods, geothermal activity, many holy places, and thousands of people living there. It is all part of a bigger picture. The mountains are active, alive, and they interact with their environment continuously, mostly silently, without causing any harm or interruption in the environment. People depend on the activity of the Alps. They need the water pouring out of the rocks. Their activity and aliveness is the very reason for people living there since thousands of years in the first place. As shown earlier, there is a continuous energy exchange happening between ground and sky everywhere. The variability of the and the fluctuations of these happening between ground and sky. I skipped a line. The variability and the fluctuations of these exchanges are getting more and more researched since the understanding of them makes it possible to predict earthquakes. Something which is still seen as impossible by many mainstream scientists. The word science is derived from the word nescience, which means being in a state of not knowing. Therefore, the only goal of science should be the goal of understanding, but it seems there is a wall of ignorance towards certain things. Despite the international standard of scientific papers being peer-reviewed, which should give it equal credibility in comparison to other peer-reviewed papers, many very important papers in the history of science are ignored. Their recognition would end much of the modern science research immediately. The mystery would cease to exist and therefore the research too. There would be plenty of research to be done afterwards, of course, but science would make a step further. A paradigm shift would occur. They might also happen in cycles. The ongoing paradigm cycle lasts already for approximately 150 years, and it is time for a change. Science seems to have settled to keep alive their mysteries. Like monks in a monastery, the modern scientific community will continue to refuse systematically to take in any new information, defend their own truth as the only one, and will be repeating the same mantras over and over again. They also like to keep mysteries alive because that's the easiest way to keep the money flowing into their business, such as geological survey institutes or the search for black holes. Their goal is to make as much profit as possible, which has absolutely nothing to do with the search for truth. The amount of evidence their paradigm is wrong grows daily. Many of the clues haven't been hidden. They were there, in plain sight, all the time. We just must watch them from a different perspective and use an open mind. It is very interesting to research locations where earthquakes occur. Are there water veins or other water bodies? Do we find any signs of possible recent activity? Are there any thermal springs, glaciers, concrete or other mining operations, caves, lakes, rivers, mineral water springs, holy places like churches or monasteries, dams, etc. in the vicinity of the quake? All of these are very important clues which should be taken into account in order to get a more holistic picture of the situation that takes many aspects into account other than just geology. The following picture, figure 14, is from Google Earth. I found this picture while checking out an earthquake in an interesting region of the Alps. It was a very nice example of an energy exchange between Earth and sky. Maybe it could be called something like an alpine urchin spine, since the primary principle is the same. Picture number 14. In the Alps. There's a cloud arising from the mountain. Figure 14 shows quite likely an energy exchange between ground and sky. It has undeniable visual similarities with a breathing volcano. The location is in the Italian Alps in the Bolzano region. I am not sure about the name of the mountain in question, but I guess it's the Rollspitze. We have to go still a little bit further down. Yeah, I think there might be some energy exchange going on, and there is something like indigenous cloud forming within the mountain, which makes elements like hydrogen rising up in the mountain. And as it comes to the surface, it forms a cloud because it starts to bind with oxygen. That's the abandon. After all those references which are used in the text. The process of learning should be driven by curiosity and based on the honesty towards oneself. Does anything of this make sense? This question, which should be asked every now and then, and it has to be answered honestly. If it doesn't make sense, the idea must be thought over at least. My research about this topic is far from over. And new evidence appears daily. The substitute shows 3 things which I thought are so important pieces of evidence worth adding but weren't included in the paper. Now we just jump straight to this one. Possible hydrogen emissions related to cryptodome activities. Possible hydrogen emissions related to cryptodome activities. Central Europe is mainly calcareous stones such as limestone, granite, dolomite, marble, etc. Most likely the different stones are made from the same base matter which has a high content of calcium. And the different stones are different stages of electromagnetic altering processes. Elements transmutate if altered electrically. For example, potassium transmutes into calcium. The geothermal potential of the region is rather high and water is found everywhere, pouring out of almost every mountain, flowing as rivers in the valleys and forming lakes. Like shown in the paper, clouds are often seen lingering in the mountainous regions. Sometimes the clouds are very close to a mountain and the only clouds in the sky. This could have something to do with a certain storability of heat of rocks due to their density as a material. It could also have something to do with the geoelectric conditions, shape and form, or circumstances, but also with certain chemical reactions. All chemical reactions are electrical in nature, i.e., matter of valence transfer as taught in any basic chemistry class, which I have never visited. This is just something so important to understand that I mention it again. Yeah, I learned about that later, not in school. Some time ago I learned that if you drop pure calcium into water it starts to react and releases hydrogen gas. Hydrogen is highly flammable, but it is also part of water. I think it would be possible that through changes in the geoelectric environment water rises within the mountains upwards, maybe not as a stream of liquid water, much more as a cloud within hydrophilic materials. It could be called endogenous cloud, as this cloud of H2O moves within the mountain and comes into contact with calcareous rocks. The chemical reaction takes place. Hydrogen gas gets released, which eventually makes its way to the surface, where it immediately starts to bind with oxygen and water gets created. Since we are talking about gaseous substances, we could also expect water to be in this state, and this is what we see. Clouds. The hydrogen might be emitted by the mountain in certain places through 2 mechanisms. First, the most obvious, cracks in the rocks. The second is quite likely related to the electromagnetic fields and energy flow patterns of the mountain itself and its role in its energy field. The clouds are visible for everybody, no special equipment required, and totally for free. Hydrogen is very abundant in nature and probably hard to detect since it teams up with oxygen and forms water. Maybe the obviousness of this geological process is what kept it obscured from common science. Undoubtedly, also precipitation plays a significant role of these processes. For example, rain or meltwater can also penetrate deep into the rocks and a similar process of hydrogen release can happen. Maybe that's why the mountains are usually covered with clouds after rainfall. The importance of calcium in alpine environments is also from interest to other people. They also found interesting evidence about certain connections between pH and altitude. Conclusion: this theory still needs much more exploration, but I think it is an important aspect to take into account in order to get a picture as coherent as possible. Maybe the hydrogen anion is the white rabbit. Through its negative charge and great abundance, it could be the root and source of all alkalinity, the reason for why the white rivers are white and why Earth is a blue marble. Earth's surface has a net negative charge, as earlier shown with Thornhill's repellent core. So it might not be a coincidence that hydrogen accumulates at the surface and makes life on Earth possible. In the Birkeland current, hydrogen and oxygen are also found on the outer side. Thank you. Bye.